So, how are you today?
I'm not too bad. I was at the dentist this morning, which is as exciting as you'd imagine.
Oh,
Uh,
no, it
That
never is.
sucks. The
Yeah.
dentist
how
is
are you doing?
the thing.
We're doing good. It's actually our day off from work today, so we're just getting stuff done.
That's always good. There he is.
I apologize. My computer is slow for something that's only 2 years old.
Technology, right?
Yeah. It's really annoying when you feel like you've got to keep renewing devices every 5 minutes and you're like, but this was fine 6 months ago.
Right?
Exactly. Like,
Exactly.
and I was a computer tech back in the day, and it's so aggravating that stuff just goes slower.
Yes.
Okay, we are there.
Okay, so I don't know if you've ever seen our podcast, but we have the audio version that's available on just about every platform. And then we also put the videos up on YouTube. So
Yeah, that's fine.
um, I will be sending you the links to those once we get everything edited and posted so that you can use them for your promotional for your book.
Yeah.
Which is awesome, by the way. And I am not a digital reader. And your publisher, first of all, the invitation to do this, if I may be frank, fucking awesome. Thank you. It was freaking awesome. But I could not do the digital, so we ordered the
Oh,
book.
cool.
Yeah. And I like it very much. What
Good.
inspired you? I mean, you spoke about it in the book, but if you could tell, what inspired you to do this?
Oh, I think I'd been writing about different types of divination for a really long time on my blog, and it had then been on
Yeah.
my podcast.
Mhm.
And Mark Norman, who does the folklore podcast, who was connected with Crossed Crow, he was like, "Oh, Crossed Crow, looking for some books. What would you like to write about?" And I went, "Oh, divination," without even thinking, because I was like, "There's so much to it, and I've covered so much of it already." And then it was a question of then looking at, well, there's loads of books on how to do divination. There's some excellent books. There's some excellent books on different types of divination. But what I wasn't finding a huge amount of was divination and folklore, because then that way it's kind of this is how ordinary people were coming into contact with certain, and obviously some of them, like augury, isn't exactly an everyday person kind of thing, but you
Right,
can
right.
adapt it. You can adapt it. I mean, hopefully people aren't going around looking at the organs of animals, but you never know. And things like, looking at clouds, on the other hand, that's open to everyone who has a cloudy sky. So it was easier to find certain types of divination purely because of the fact that that was what ordinary people did, and then people had written it down. So it came out of a desire for looking at divination that ordinary people might have used, or forms of divination that you could adapt. And obviously, certain ones had to fall outside of the scope of the book just because there wasn't a huge amount of information on them in terms of folklore. Like there's books and books and books about astrology, and geomancy is fabulous, but there's just not as much about how ordinary people used it. So I thought I'm gonna have to leave those to one side. But yes, that was the inspiration. It was the love of divination, but then how does that fit in with folklore?
Gotcha. And now we didn't send this question, and so I apologize. But runes.
Right.
I didn't, unless I missed it somehow in the book. But I don't, I don't remember seeing anything really about runes.
The thing with runes, again, it's when you consider when they basically came into common usage, as it were, it's more of a 20th century thing. So, not a huge amount of folklore about them. There's the practice of people using them. And if you look in the historical record, the best that we've got really that's commonly available is Tacitus when he talks about them in Germania. And he talks about just this idea of the way that the people in Germania were drawn lots, as it were. and that these slices of tree branch were marked with some kind of markings. Tacitus annoyingly doesn't describe them because he wasn't there. So it's like,
Right.
thanks. And obviously he drew on other sources. So whoever his sources were clearly didn't explain what these markings were. And then that was those runes were then, or those markings rather, were then interpreted by either whoever was in charge or the head of the household. So it sort of depended on who was around.
Okay.
But then that's as much as that kind of is. And obviously, I know there's people who've looked into runes in far greater detail. But then when I was interviewing Dr. Tom Burkitt on the podcast, a couple of years ago now, because he'd written a book about Norse mythology, and I sort of said to him, like, runes and divination, what gives? And he's like, yeah, we haven't really got much evidence for how they were used, other than as an alphabet, which is still cool. You know,
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
runologists who can decode these fabulous things, and I guess as a magical system, what's more magical than writing? But in terms of folkloric use of them, they just don't really pop up, at least in the sources I was looking at. So I was like, well, I'm just going to have to leave that to one
Skip
side.
over
So again,
that.
they fell into the same category as geomancy and astrology that, you know, people swear by them, but unfortunately, they don't get captured in the folklore sources.
Gotcha. Okay. I that's just something that I was curious about, but
All right. So do we want to go ahead and get started with
I thought we already did.
why we didn't do the introduction?
Oh, okay.
Hey, what's up, witches?
What's up, witches?
I'm Linda.
I'm John.
And this is Getting Witchy. And today we have a very special guest with us. We have Dr. Icy Sedgwick, the host of Fabulous Folklore podcast, who investigates the fascinating world of European folklore with a focus on the British Isles. And she's also the author of Rebel Folklore, Ghostlore, and Bring Me Love, as well as the Underground City series. So if you know Necromancer's Apprentice, I believe it was, then you know her. She's also a former ghost hunter, and she holds a PhD in film studies after examining the representation of haunted houses in contemporary Hollywood cinema. And she is with us today to discuss her newest book, Fate or Fortune.
Yes. And welcome.
Welcome.
So, Ghost Hunter.
I wondered if that would come up. Yes, it was for a company that does paranormal or did, sorry, they don't, they're sadly defunct now, but they did paranormal investigations at different haunted sites around the northeast of England. So we've got lighthouses, castles, prisons. I'm sure there were some others. Oh, Washington Old Hall, which obviously is the place from which you originally get George Washington's family. So, you know, basically used to go and run around in the dark and see if anyone wanted to chat. Is the easiest way of putting it.
How cool was that? I know this is off
depends.
subject. I know that we're not talking about this at all right now, but how cool
That's
was
fine.
that?
It was interesting, I think. For me, it was always interesting to see inside parts of buildings that you don't get to see. Because I'm like profoundly nosy, so I'd be like, oh, we get to see behind the scenes in these buildings, which probably
Right.
isn't the point. And we did certainly have some weird experiences. Whether you could necessarily go, that was definitely a spirit of the dead or not, who knows? But
Right.
I'm of the belief that there's enough supernatural creatures in folklore that you might not have met a ghost, but you could have met something else.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, there's definitely weird stuff went on.
Interesting. Cool. Very cool. So we've already you already answered the first question, which is what inspired you to do this. What is your preferred form of divination?
It depends what I want to know, really. And I'm one of those irritating people who uses divination more for like an introspective use, to sort of find out like my thoughts on something, and to help unpick stuff, and then I can find a way forward. That
Well,
being
that's the
said,
best use of it, in my opinion.
yeah,
Like your own personal, like to get a grasp of you
yeah.
in the given situation that I may not be aware of. So that's okay, cool.
Yeah, and then, but off the back of that, I think The one I use the most is probably tarot because it's the one I've used the longest. Because I got my first tarot deck when I was 18, which is longer ago than I would care to admit.
Same.
And you said in the book, you when you first got your deck, was it your sister or your mother also bought one for herself?
No,
There,
I
there
don't have a
was
sister.
well, there was somebody that you guys switched decks because you were told you shouldn't buy your own deck.
No, babe, that was me.
Okay, I'll shut up now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I could have sworn that was in here that, well, you did talk about how people say that you shouldn't buy your own deck or
Yes,
your
that is
first deck.
yeah, that's quite a common misconception. And I think Meg Jones Wall at 3 a.m. Tarot has the best way of looking at this because they say like if there's a deck you really want, gift it to yourself. So
Yeah,
then you've still gifted it, but then
yeah.
you've got a deck that you really want. Because what's the point in getting a deck where you look at the images and go, I have no idea what this is?
Right.
That's pointless. So I quite like that. I'm not even sure where that came from. I suspect that possibly came from somebody who sold tarot decks, and then they made that up as a superstition to try and help
Mm,
get people to buy them for other people because it doesn't really make sense. And you don't do it with a lot of other tools. So I'm not quite sure how it got attached to tarot, but it is a
mm.
myth.
Right.
Yes. And I apologize. I confused
That's fine.
facts
It's
too.
okay. So I know you mentioned this in the book, but for anybody who hasn't yet read it, what is the difference between divination and fortune telling?
It's a really funny one, and I think if you ask as many diviners and fortune tellers as there are, you'll get as many answers, which is really annoying when you're trying to write a book about it, because you could probably write a book just about the difference between
Right.
the two. And I found some argued that divination was interpreting messages from spirits or gods for specific questions, whereas fortune telling was looking at what the tool told you that would then tell you what was going to happen in the future. And I think Siré Jarelic Collective Cartomancy gives the best sort of definition between the two, I think, by saying that divination looks at possible outcomes for your current situation, but fortune telling tells you the most likely outcome of your situation. So divination kind of provides you with options, and it's up to you which adventure you're going to choose. But fortune telling's like, this is what's most likely to happen if everything unfolds in this particular way. There is a little bit of class snobbery around it where divination often ends up being associated with a higher class, perhaps more educated class, things like that. Obviously, when you look at augurs, taking the auspices for kings and whatnot, and fortune telling then gets relegated to this thing that the working class does. That's an
Right.
unfortunate definition, I think.
Yeah,
But
it's more looked
in
down on than
yeah,
divination.
definitely. And the
Right.
types of fortune telling versus the types of divination, I think. But ultimately, I think in the 21st century, people will pick one or the other, and they're kind of still using a tool to gain information. So I think the line to me anyway, seems to have become a lot more porous, which is probably for the best, really.
Right.
Sure. Sure. Now, got a question. When in one of was it the second or third chapter talking about like palmistry and an itchy nose or those types of things. Now I've run across a couple things, especially relating to well, not relating to, excuse me, but involving Native Americans. Or the indigenous, not Native Americans, because they were here before America. Itchy palms
Hmm.
and a ringing in the ears. Now, to the indigenous, itchy palms would mean you're getting money from somewhere. Did you run across that at all? Because I didn't see it in the book, and not to say that you have to list every freaking thing but and then the ringing in the ears, someone's talking crap about you. Did you run across that at all?
It's
I know
really
that's a silly
interesting.
question, but
It's not silly because they didn't come up in my research because they're things that I've known since I was small. So it's something that I think most people UK wide at least would definitely know that like if your left palm itches, you're going to spend money. If your right palm itches, you're going to get money. If
Right.
your feet itch, you're going to walk on strange ground. And then if your left ear's itchy, it means that someone's being nice about you. The right ear, my mum always says right for spite, so they're being unpleasant.
Mm,
I did actually go looking for a little bit further, and there was a pharmaceutical journal was talking about it, and I'm like, this is amazing, folklore in an academic journal, and they were saying that ringing in the ears particularly meant that ringing in the left ear was an omen that you would get bad news, and then somebody else said that ringing in your ears meant someone had died, and I'm like, how vague? Because someone somewhere will have
yeah,
died. Is it someone that
Right.
yeah,
you know? You know, it
right.
wasn't really very helpful. But yeah, those ones, it's like I almost forgot there were forms of divination because they're just such a part of like
Everyday
everyday life.
life.
I was like, oh yeah, no, they're supposed to mean things, aren't they? And they never work out.
What, and I don't mean to get too personal. Was your mom a practitioner?
No. It's just one of those beliefs that just like everyone seems to know, but no one
Okay.
knows where they got it from. It's
Right.
sort of yeah, because I mean. Most people that I know, my mother's the one who does it the most. Like if I say, "Oh, my ears itchy," she'll be like, "Oh, which one?" And I'm like, "Does it matter?" And because again, you're like, at some point, someone is going to be talking about you, but what can I do with that information? That is a useless omen,
Right.
Right, right.
unless it
And I
tells
didn't
us
mean to
who it
get
is.
I was just curious. I mean, um, most people that I've met that hold to the folklore and obscure beliefs, like the ringing in the ears means the itchy palms are practitioners in some form or fashion. That's why I didn't mean to be too personal
She
or.
could be and doesn't realize, is all I'm gonna
Mm,
say. Because it's one of those things. I think when I hear some of the stories that she's told about my granddad, I think saw one of his relatives, like a vision of him standing at the end of his bed, and my granddad had gone, "What are you doing here? You're dead," which just is such a northern thing to do to sort of
right.
respond like that, and things like that. So I think that there's probably some sort of untapped potential there, shall we say? So if she's a practitioner, she's unaware of it.
Fair enough.
Gotcha. So we did have a couple questions about tarot, specifically.
Mhm.
Now, we actually had just finished up a series on the tarot when we got the invitation from your publishing company.
Which was awesome. We
It was,
appreciate the
we
invitation. This is
definitely do,
our very first book review and interview with an
with the
author.
author. So
So
Oh,
yeah.
cool! I feel honored.
yeah,
Um, so
so do
when
we.
we definitely do, yes. When we were doing our research, one of the things that came up was that today's standard playing cards are basically descended from tarot, like they were translated into that to kind of keep it the practice hidden in plain sight, so to speak. Um, and it's basically like the minor arcana and the fool translates into the Joker. Um, when that happened, like where was tarot? Like where were the actual like tarot at that time?
Well, it's really interesting when you look at them because I think if you look at the documentation for both types of cards, it actually goes the other way around. So playing cards is quite hard to know exactly where they came from because there are some sort of paper tiles that could be used like playing cards, which actually appear in China and then they sort of appear in
Mhm.
Southwest Asia, and then they end up in Europe, obviously, because they probably, I'm guessing, came along with trade. But there are some late 14th century documents that describe these cards coming from Southwest Asia, and Europeans definitely knew of them in 1377, and they were banned in Paris because people were gambling too much, which I thought was quite funny. So people were obviously using playing cards literally as playing cards at that point. I think the suits hadn't quite settled down yet, and the suits are sometimes different in different places and they eventually get standardized because obviously it depends which version you look at. Whereas the tarot, on the other hand, likely anyway, obviously there's various theories about this, but the most likely place they came from is the Visconti Sforza deck from, I want to say it's Milan. and that appears in the 15th century in Italy. And that one, the Major Arcana is the bit which people kind of aren't quite sure whether it was intended as portraits of actual people, because there's a lot of people in the Major Arcana, or if they were for some other reason, but they were what's the word, commissioned for some reason. And then they were used for a game called Tarocchi, which eventually became Trionfi and Triumph. And you can still buy Tarocchi decks in Italy. And I think you can get them in France as well. And then they kind of kick around in France for a France is a hotbed of divination stuff. It's amazing. And then you get the Tarot de Marseille standardized in the 18th century because there was lots of different French decks going around at the time. And so Tarot started out as a card game as well. And obviously there's quite a lot of discussion about people trying to say, oh, tarot decks are actually like what's left of the Library of Alexandria and all that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot of
I've seen that too.
Egyptomania, yeah, in the 18th century where people are trying to make the tarot almost more occult than it maybe is. But I think the first time it's documented as being used for divination is actually 1781, so it's way after the introduction of playing cards. People were trying to use playing cards for divination in, I think it's the 18th century, and I found a text explaining how to do it on Internet Archive, and it is the most convoluted thing. It is not easy to do at all, and it's good because all you need is a deck of playing cards, and obviously they would have
Right.
been really easy to get hold of at any stage compared to tarot. But tarot kind of disappears for a little while and then pops up sort of in the 19th century. When you get the likes of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn get their hands on it, and
And
then thus
Aleister
we get,
Crowley.
yes,
Yes.
yeah. So I think one of the things that I found really interesting is the number of Oracle decks and fortune telling decks that were available. And they, for some reason, I mean, they were mass market. I think the deck that I want to say it's the Lenormand originally comes from was a fortune telling deck, and then it was tweaked and so on. And I want to say that was a game from Vienna. And it's fascinating to see how people have had this drive to use cards for divination for such a long time. And tarot just kind of systematizes it in a way. So I feel like playing cards then come back into fashion for divination in Europe. I know they're obviously used in a different way for fortune telling in
Right.
America. And I think the beauty of using playing cards for divination is nobody actually knows what you're doing because playing cards
Mm.
don't have that association with like esoteric imagery. So you can be doing a full-on spread and
Right.
someone just
And
thinks you're playing a weird card game.
yeah, yeah, you said in the book, you could be doing a full spread and people think you're playing solitaire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I quite like that. So in a way, it's almost like the one that then hides in plain sight is actually playing cards. Um, but then I guess um, when you look at tarot by comparison, I suppose it's become so mainstream now. Would anyone bat an eyelid if you sat there in Starbucks doing a Celtic cross? Probably not.
No,
Probably not.
Um,
actually, I have seen people do that.
that's so cool.
And yeah, nobody batted an eye about it. So yeah, yeah, it has become so incredibly mainstream now that, people are just like, oh, it's tarot. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool.
I have a question. So this might be um and well, Icy. Where did you get that from?
Oh, this is obviously not my real name, as you
No,
might
yeah.
imagine,
And I'm
and
not asking for I'm just, where did you?
it it's got a really boring story behind it. It came from back in the day when you used to use like internet handles on message boards, like back in the early days of the internet. And it was just part of my username, and everyone used to go by their handle rather
Right.
than their real name. And then I miss those days. And then over
Yes,
time, people just shortened it.
the
AOL days.
ability of anonymity
Yeah, yeah,
before there were videos, cameras everywhere. You know,
yeah.
yeah, I miss those days too.
And over time, it just stuck. And then when I started submitting short stories for publication, I thought, I know, I'll use that as my name because it's more memorable. So it might kind of stick in the mind more. And then it sort of stuck. And then really, I should have changed my surname because that's the one no one can spell.
I was just curious because I like it. I was just wondering. That's all.
A really boring origin story.
Not really,
Not really.
not boring at all. Because our childhoods before the age of internet and everybody having a phone, or excuse me, a camera in their phone, it was fun times.
No one knows what
Yeah,
happened in
right.
those days.
exactly.
There's
No evidence.
evidence. Wish we could go back to that. So I know you have a chapter that's pretty much all food divinations.
Yes.
Love, by the way. There were a couple that you mentioned that I was so giddy when I read them, because I was like, oh, I wonder if she's got him. I wonder if she's got him. And you did. One of them was using the apples for like basically if a young lady wanted to know who she was going to marry, she would take an apple and peel it in one go, and then and I had read different ways that they could do it. Either they dropped it in water or they dropped it on the ground, and whatever letter it looked like was the first initial of the guy's name. And if I recall correctly, this was usually done on Halloween.
Yes, really associated with Halloween.
And that
So
one,
bobbing for apples wasn't about a treat necessarily.
It could also just be that they're really hard to grab with your teeth. So I like to think that that was just to add like an extra layer of difficulty to it.
yeah, you got to work for it.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, like the two could be tied together is all I would.
And that one, I actually, the first mention that I had seen of that was actually in an episode of Charmed, and then I went and looked it up and found that the other way, because I think on Charmed they had her drop it into a barrel of water or something, and it formed. But then I also found one where it said they just dropped it on the ground, and however it formed was it. So yeah, I was really excited to see that you mentioned that one. And I think the other one was the chestnuts in the fire. Yeah, if a girl had to choose between two suitors, she would basically give each one a name and put it in the fire, and whichever one popped first
is the one that she would. Yes.
So that one I was really excited to see too, just because it was things that like I knew, so it's like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be mentioned, because I usually don't see those mentioned very many places.
And that's one of the things I enjoyed about the book the most, is like actually seeing in writing things that I have heard or have been told since I was wee little. And giving a history to them. It's not just my great grandpa used to say such and such and such.
Right.
It's this is where it came from, and so on and so forth. But I enjoyed it very much.
Good. I spent a very long time on JSTOR and Internet Archive just digging this stuff out. And
I bet you
I
did.
hope it was worth it.
I know, doing our research for different shows that we've done or episodes that we've done, the research on a 30 to 45-minute episode is insane. The amount of research you did on this book, though, I can't even imagine how detailed you had to be, and like all the different. You said you searched archives, and I mean, being in England, or
yes,
you have some of the oldest libraries in the world.
I've actually been in one of them in Manchester, and it's the one that John Dee was actually linked with, Chetham's Library in Manchester. And that's the one where they've got the table with the burn mark on it that is supposed to be from where you conjured the devil. And I went on the tour and they never mentioned it. So that at the end, they're like, are there any questions? And I'm like, yeah, where's the John Dee table? So they actually took me back downstairs to show me this burn mark. And it doesn't look very, very hoof-like, which is annoying. But upstairs, when you look at the books, it's just like this absolute bibliophile's dream, of all these like really old books. And it's just, the smell in there. It's like, this is what heaven looks like.
That she would be in heaven. Like, yeah.
I love books.
She loves
I
books.
love books. One of the other things I was very giddy about is on page 53. You mentioned making tea.
Yes.
And one of the things that I had heard or read somewhere, and I can't remember where I got it from, but what I had read was to stir food or drink with a fork or a knife is to stir strife.
Mhm.
And in your book, you basically say only stir tea with a spoon.
Yeah.
Don't use anything else. And so I was like, oh, yep, there it is. Like she says it. don't
I
use
do know quite a
anything.
lot of artists who've accidentally stirred tea with a paintbrush when they've mixed up their mugs. That's happened quite a few times with quite a few of my artist friends.
Wait, what? See that again? For the
If they've
people
been
in the
doing
back that didn't
watercolor or
hear you.
something, they'll have like a cup with their water in, which obviously they'll wash their brush in, but then they'll
Right.
put the tea next to it, and then they'll put the brush in the wrong one.
Oh,
So quite a lot of artists have accidentally stirred their tea with a paintbrush.
which would
Which
bring strife,
Yeah,
especially if you drank it.
well, exactly.
that's a rude awakening right there.
So I'm curious now. Of course, you talked about, and I apologize. I don't know the names of it, but like looking at the internal organs.
Yes.
What is the creepiest form of divination that you found, and did you put it in the book? I mean, there's necromancy, and I mean, and I like that chapter, even though I was like, wait a minute, that's not necromancy, because I had Hollywood's view of necromancy. And
Yes.
as you stated, was it the Living Dead or Evil Dead?
Yeah.
With Bruce Campbell?
Yes.
So back to the original question. I'm sorry. I'm excited to talk to you. What is the creepiest form of divination?
I think it's actually probably one of the ones which thankfully has been debunked as a pseudoscience, and it's creepy for a different reason. Because like necromancy is weird, like particularly when you look at some of the ways it's done in things like Greek myth, where you've got to use blood and things to call the spirits of the dead, or you need like a corpse that still has an intact windpipe and lungs so it can speak to you. I mean, that's weird, but it's also Greek
Crazy.
mythology, so you're like, there's weirder stuff in there, let's be honest. And I think that and I love Greek mythology, so I was quite excited to have a look at where necromancy sort of came from.
Her too.
But I think, yeah, phrenology was the creepiest, and that's the idea that the bumps on your skull somehow correlated to personality traits, and that someone could like read your skull to tell what kind of character you had. And this led to this weird craze where you can obviously get the china heads that you sometimes see as part of like set design and things in films where it's got marked on like charisma or deviance or whatever. And people would then basically look for skulls to practice on, which is why the composer Haydn, somebody dug him up and stole his head because they wanted to see if his skull corresponded to musical genius. I mean, that's really wrong on so many levels.
So many.
And I think phrenology,
Well,
much
didn't it
like
also?
physiognomy,
I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead.
sorry, for the phrenology and in physiognomy were both then used to justify all kinds of like racial profiling and things like that. And there is no correlation between the bumps on your skull and what kind of person you are, because what kind of person you are isn't fixed either.
Right.
Whereas phrenology is like, these are the things you're good at. This is how you're going to be a
And it's
terrible
not based
person.
on
It's
skin color.
nonsense. That comes into phrenology a little bit, and it unfortunately physiognomy as well. And all of it again, it's just nonsense. There's no
Yeah.
correlation between like any of your facial features and the kind of person that you're going to be.
Right.
And so I'm quite glad those two, because they're not really forms of divination in the way that you're not looking to see what's going to happen in the future necessarily, but you're trying to read a person's character to predict what they might do. So I'm very glad that those got debunked, because it's like, yeah, that's used for all the wrong reasons.
Very true. Thank you for that. So if you had the opportunity to tell, and this is not one of the questions, I apologize. We do a lot of stuff off the cuff. if you had the opportunity to tell someone one thought that was thinking about divination in any form, what would it be that you would want to tell them? I know
I
that's a big one.
think it would probably be that even skeptics can get something out of it because of the way that you can use it in so many different ways. So even if you're like, I don't believe I can tell the future because the future hasn't happened yet.
Mm.
Yes, but you still exist. You can still find things out about yourself. And the way I quite like using tarot cards, for example, is everyone will have this where you'll pull a card and go, oh, that's mean. Because the deck's basically told you something you maybe didn't want to hear. It might have given you a perspective that you just hadn't thought of. And, even if it's not in a futuristic sort of sense, it could just simply be that you're like, oh man, I knew that might come up and I didn't want it to, but now it has. Now I have to confront that. So I feel like using them as like, or using cards almost as that friend who always tells you the truth, whether you want them to or not. I feel like that's open
Yeah,
to
the true
everybody.
friend. The true friend.
Yes, yes, that's open to everyone, whether you believe in messages from spirits or whether you take a more psychological approach. Doesn't matter. Divination is available to everybody, I think.
So, in that note, because you mentioned tarot again, obviously, as you said, tarot is one of your favorites, if not your favorite. So, what are your thoughts on, or do you subscribe to the reverse cards in readings? Because some
I
people do, and they have like the complete opposite meaning. But my thing is, whether it's reverse or straight up, the burning tower is still burning. The hangman is still hanging. So,
Yes.
and we talked about this in our
Yes.
episode about tarot. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't use them, and I think because of the fact that some people will do like you say, it's like, oh, this is the opposite, and other people are like, oh, this means you've got a block in that area, and I'm like, but there's already 78 cards with a huge number of meanings. Why do
Right.
I then need to add another 78 potential meanings? So personally,
Right.
I don't use, and if I really want a deck to tell me what it thinks, I'll use the Baleen Oracle instead because that doesn't pull any punches at all.
The what?
Um, the Baleen Oracle. I only just discovered it recently and it's huge in France. And there's a teacher, Serge Perot, who teaches courses in how to use it. And yeah, the cards are divided into suits according to like the sun, moon, Mercury, and so on. So the seven classical planets. And yeah, it will tell you what it thinks, whether you want it to or not. So I think if I wanted to have something that was going to tell me like the opposite of something nice, I'd probably go for the Billion Oracle instead. But with a tarot deck, I'm like, I'm just going to stick with the 78, and where the card appears in the spread is just as likely to provide me with that kind of information. I don't need to confuse myself further with upside
Convolute it
down
by
cards.
making it more
Right.
complicated.
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, because I feel the same way. It's like the card is the card. I mean, they
Yeah.
flip sometimes when you're shuffling them. It's
Yes.
just it is what it is.
Right.
Hmm.
Did you have anything else?
I did not, except that I really enjoyed the book. Thank you for the time that you
As you
put
can
into
tell,
it.
he's got all these little
Yeah, I've got all
piece
kinds of little
markers.
I've got all kinds of little notes in it and things.
I'm counting like 6 post-its
Yeah,
and
yeah. Anyway, um, very much enjoyed it. Thank you for putting the time in, and thank you and your public. It was the publisher,
the
correct?
publisher, yes.
Yes.
For reaching out to us. This was very cool.
My
Very
pleasure.
cool. And I apologize because it was my fault that we did not get to meet with you, what, 2 weeks
2
ago?
weeks ago, yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely fine.
I didn't get the book yet. So
These things happen. These things
I was
happen.
waiting for the physical copy, and but thank you very much for your patience and meeting with us today. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
The one thing I wanted to add was you sent over the question about love divinations aimed at boys, because a lot of
Yes.
them are aimed at girls.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
And I obviously when I wrote Bring Me Love, the book about love magic and love divination, that's literally all that one's about. And I was sort of sitting
Wait,
there
wait,
going,
wait,
this
wait,
is
wait, 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 wait. I'm sorry. You have a book about
Love divination.
love
yeah,
divination?
Yeah.
yeah,
Just about love divination?
and
What's it
love
called?
magic. That one's Bring Me Love. I can't remember the subtitle because I'm terrible with subtitles, but that one came out at the start of the year. Um, and yeah, there's obviously I divided that one up into different types of magic. So there's like puppets in there, and
Puppets?
again, there's a whole chapter on food.
Topics.
Yeah. Um, Food becomes quite a big topic where I'm concerned.
Oh, and well, food. I mean, excuse me. I mean, the adage, "A way to a man's heart is through his stomach."
Yes.
I
Or
mean,
his rib cage.
or
Um,
I just like you, Icy.
I
Um,
try.
yeah, food plays a big part in. I mean, a good chicken soup
Hmm.
is is what's I'm drawing a blank, not a spell. Um,
Well, it's definitely a magic potion.
a potion. Thank you. I was sorry. Um, but yeah, food definitely plays a big part in um divination, from tea leaves to coffee grounds to whatever you make so what is the name of that book again for our
It's got
listeners?
it's called Bring Me Love, but I can't remember the
Bring Me Love
subtitle.
is all they need. They
Yep.
can look it up. Thank you. I'm actually gonna look that up too, even though I don't need to have love brought to me. I have it, but that sounds very interesting to me. um I know we're not talking about that book per se, but what was your conclusion about, or thought after writing the book, about trying to bring love to you?
I had to take a slightly different approach because obviously here in the 21st century we have a thing called ethics to think about. So I very much made it of because some of the charms and the divinations are like just seeing a vision of your future intended. So there's no like manipulation or
Of
you're
a
not kind of
person's
trying to
will,
compel someone. Yeah.
right?
So a lot of it it's like if you're sort of wanting to bring love into your life, then bring love in general into your. I mean, who knows? Someone might end up adopting their best pet ever. It obviously
Right.
love can take so many forms. So, and obviously a lot of them are quite gendered. And I was like, well, just throw that one out. It's like it doesn't really matter. With a lot of them, where it might say, "Oh, a girl does this looking for a boy," or as these examples are, a boy looking for a girl. It's like, who cares if it's a boy looking for a boy or whatever? It doesn't matter. You can just read it as person looking for person.
Right.
Right.
Because obviously it's one of those things you don't know if it just hasn't been collected at the point it was written down that there maybe were other versions of these different things, or if someone's just made an assumption. You don't know. So I'm like, try them, see what happens. I've tried lots of them, nothing happened, but that's the side issue. Um, but with the boys trying to find out who their intended would be, I just thought it was really nice that there was actually a couple of practices aimed at men, because some of the things aimed at men for the love magic side of things were a little bit nefarious. But with the plant divinations,
Nef- Nefarious in what way?
well, one of them was if a young man was going to a dance and he wanted to have his pick of partners, he would wear a piece of cuckoo pint, which is arum maculatum, or otherwise known as lords and ladies, highly poisonous. But its nickname of cuckoo pint comes from the fact it's got like the leaf is sort of like shaped a bit like that, and then it's got a spadix, which is very phallic.
Yes.
And pint was the Old English nickname for penis. So if he was then wanting to wear that to attract the prettiest girls at the dance, you can sort of guess what he was hoping was going to happen as a result of that. So and there's other ones involving notches on posts and things like that, and yeah, it's a bit, it's not as bad as it is now, I guess, um but I like the fact though that there was one practice that was specifically for boys that I found, and one that was done by boys and girls, or just anyone really. And one of them was if a boy wanted to know if he stood a chance with the girl that he liked, he needed to take a laurel leaf, prick her initials on it, and then put it under his hat, sort of leave it all day. And then when he looked at it later on, if the letters had turned red, it meant that she felt the same way about him. He could have just asked, would have been quicker, but there we go.
And more accurate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you could have probably avoided quite a lot of problems just asking.
Yeah.
There was a version in Brittany where the young people would just go out to like a local standing stone or a dolmen on St. John's Eve, so June the 23rd, and men would wear, or they would take green wheat and women would take flax blossoms, and then they would basically dance around the stone, have a bit of a jolly time, leave the wreaths on the stone, and then they would go back a couple of days later and have a look. And if the wreath was still fresh after a couple of days, their lover was true. If it had shriveled, then their love was doomed. But I like the fact that there was options for either. It wasn't just restricted to girls. And the final one I want to include, because this is just weird. And I say weird in the best possible way, because it's from 1700 Scotland. And this is pulling the kale. And for this
Pulling the
one,
kale.
yeah, as in, kale leaves, the vegetable. I'm not sure
Oh,
if it's
yes,
got a
yes, yes,
different,
yes, yes. Yeah, we call it kale.
yeah. And basically, you would be blindfolded and you would walk through a kale field at midnight and you would pull up the first bunch of leaves that you basically stumbled across. And then you would have a look at the kale stalk to see what it told you about your intended partner. So if it was sort of like tall and strong, then that was the kind of partner you would get. But if it was a bit shriveled, again, kind of partner you would get. And then the taste would tell you. So obviously, if it was bitter, you would get a bitter person, and so on. If there was a lot of dirt on the stalk, it meant that the person would have a lot of money. If it was clean, it meant they would be poor, and all this kind of thing. And Robert Burns actually wrote about it in a poem that he wrote called Halloween, which was published in 1785. And someone pulls up a kale root that's curly like a pig's tail, which obviously isn't a good omen. Some people would then take the kale home. This is more for the girls, and they would pin it over the door, and then whoever came through the door first would be their partner. But the reason I bring it up is because I was looking in the newspapers online, and there was actually a news story from the 19th century where people were still doing this, but it was really looked down on. So these girls who went out and they asked this guy, like, "Oh, can you give us a hand? Because we need to put the blindfolds on. Can you put them on and we'll go off and do the kale thing?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." He checked with his wife first, and she was like, "Yeah, go ahead." And then the day after, he came home and found that his wife had moved out because his mother had convinced or her mother rather had convinced his wife that he must be up to no good and this is all really shady and it's a really negative thing and it's going to bring disrepute on the family just purely because he went out and helped these girls put blindfolds on and go out into a kale field so they could pull the kale. And I thought it was really interesting that this was like a massive drama in the newspaper and it was in the 19th century and it was like, oh wow, so people were actually still doing it and causing some kind
That's
of,
in the papers?
yeah, it was in the newspaper. It was brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my
It's
goodness.
amazing what you can find in 19th century newspapers.
Yes, yes, it is. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
My
Um,
pleasure.
I've really enjoyed Fate or Fortune, The Art and Folklore of Divination by Icy Sedgwick. Good job,
Cool.
by the way. It's a great, great read. Once I got the hard copy, I couldn't. And we appreciate the digital version, but I'm just not a digital reader. I need the paper, so we went and bought it. But
Yeah, we're both very tactile people. Like there's because we're old school, we're
like
from,
you said, when there were no cameras.
Yes.
Yes.
So they're when reading, at least for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, when I'm reading, it's not just about the words I'm reading, it's the smell of the ink, the feel of the paper, even just the way the pages sound when I flip through them, when I just kind of flip them. It's everything, and it all helps, I think, ingrain the words in me, so that like sometime later, if I smell the same smell, it's like it'll remind me of that book,
That's cool.
So I mean, that's just the way it is for me. But so yeah, I'm more of a physical copy person. I was able to make do with the digital while he was waiting for the
because
physical.
I wasn't giving her the physical copy. Once we got it, that was mine.
But I definitely enjoyed your book. I am so glad that your publisher reached out to us to ask
very
us
awesome
if we would have.
They are lovely people.
We appreciate your time today.
My pleasure.
We appreciate the effort and energy and knowledge that you put into the book, because obviously, I mean, I've written a book, but it's not published. So I know the effort that you have to. There's the first draft, the second, the third, the fourth, sometimes fifth. It takes a lot, and you put a lot of thought into this. You put a lot of energy into this, and I sense that and recognize that in the reading. Like, it wasn't just, this is what happened here in this time period. You put substance behind it, and I, anyway, could tell that, and I appreciate that.
Good. I got really excited writing it, and when I get a bit over enthusiastic with things, and kind of fall down the rabbit hole. So I'm glad that came across.
Yes, you can go down the rabbit hole pretty quickly when you do it. So you just said you were excited about it. What excited you the most about writing this book compared to others that you've done?
I think it was basically getting to geek out about something that I had like a special interest in anyway. And I think, you kind of sit there and go, oh my God, I get paid to write about this stuff. This is amazing. And I think because I'm interested in the area anyway, it then meant I had an excuse to go and read more and learn more about it. But then I always kind of have a thing of, well, I've learned all of this stuff. Now I want to share it with other people. So it's that kind of,
Yeah.
oh, I'm like that irritating kid who's like, look what I found at school today. That's me, but on it as an adult. So I'm bumping into people. You'll never guess what I've learned today. So that's essentially the just the general gist behind all of it, really.
That's awesome. Thank you again. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
No, that's it.
I see. Okay. And you, baby?
Yeah, I'm
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time today. As she said, she will send you the links to everything, and have a wonderful day or night. It's nighttime there, correct?
Yeah, it's nearly 8 o'clock here.
Oh, geez. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for your contribution to the world of magic and divination. And hopefully we get to speak to you again sometime, maybe with another book.
Oh, there will be more books.
Ah, awesome.
Excellent. It's been lovely chatting to you.
lovely talking to you too, Icy. Thank you so much. We will definitely reach out to you once I get everything edited and posted.
Have
Awesome.
a
Thank you very
wonderful
much.
night. Be
Yeah, have a
safe.
good day.
Thank
too.
you.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye. That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Our first book review, and it
Yes.
actually went pretty freaking
Yes.
well.
Yeah, our first interview with an author. So, witches,
And bitches,
check this book out.
Fate
Again,
or
Fate
Fortune.
by Icy Sedgwick. Lots of very, very interesting information about various types of divinations.
Some pretty freaking creepy.
Yes. Yes. And then tell us what you think about this book or any of her other books if you happen to come across them.
And her contact information is in the book. So if you want to learn more, also it's in the book. So I'm not Fabulous Folklore podcast.
Yes.
So if you search Fabulous Folklore or Icy Sedgwick, you will find her podcast and all the different things that she taught. She's obviously pretty freaking cool. And I personally think she's one of us. Me personally. But yeah, this has been awesome. I was a bit nervous at the beginning because we've never actually, I mean, we were on what's your friend from high school?
Oh, Peter Sir's
podcast, talking about magic and witchcraft
Right.
and such, but we've never actually had an author on our show, and this was really
right.
freaking
We've
cool.
we've had a couple guests, but this
Yeah,
is our first author
that we know of. Maybe they were authors too, but they didn't tell us that. But
true. Well,
yes.
I know Juliana's not.
Okay.
But
anyway, you
yes.
know how I sidetracked. Sorry. This was awesome. Icy is awesome. Pick up the book, Fate or Fortune. Barnes and Noble, just almost any bookstore. You could probably find it in the library even. Thank you, Icy. This was a pleasure. Have a great day, witches. We love you. Peace.
Peace out, witches. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We love you. And we can't wait to see you again.